Hey guys, Hackersploit here, back again with another video. Welcome back to the Linux security series. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to set up and secure Nginx. Now, Nginx and Apache are very similar, but again, slightly different in terms of the way they're designed and the way they work. Apache is much more popular. I was about to say successful, but it's much more popular, much more widely adopted than Nginx. Nginx is more of an upcoming piece of technology that again is getting a lot of is gaining a lot of traction and momentum. So again, it's worthwhile to know how Nginx works, how to configure it, and how to secure Nginx, from basic security misconfigurations. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we'll be talking about web application firewalls like mod security and how they can be integrated with Nginx and Apache in the next videos. These videos are just focusing on getting Nginx up and running and ensuring that it's as secure as possible right out of the box. That being said, our WordPress server that we set up was using the LAMP stack, so it's using Apache by default. That means we're going to have to create our own Linode, and we'll just set up a quick Linode here, and we'll install Nginx manually. So for our base operating system, I'll just use Ubuntu by default, Ubuntu 20.04. For the region, we can stick with Atlanta, and for the actual plan, I'll stick with a nanode. That's perfectly fine, and we'll just call this Nginx security. Right, and I'll specify a root password. Again, we're just creating another Linode, so where I can actually demonstrate how to install it, how to configure it, because Nginx needs a bit of configuration, as soon as you install it. So we'll just hit create here, and I'm just going to let this create the, it's going to start provisioning the Linode for us. And then after it's done that, we can get started with installing Nginx. We'll also take a look at how to set up, authentication using username and password, similar to what we did with Apache. So I'm just going to let this boot up. All right, so our Linode is created, and I'll just copy the IP right over here, and we'll try and log in via SSH. So I'll just say SSH, and we say root. Specify the IP address right over here. It's going to ask us to add it to the known hosts. We'll do that. Specify the password I had set earlier, and we should be able to log in. There we are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to install Nginx, and we'll also install the Apache 2 utilities, which will allow us to create or to use the HD password utility. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to say sudo apt install or apt update. First of all, we'll update our repositories, and then we say apt install. We'll just say Nginx, and we then specify Apache 2 utils, and that's very simple to install as well. And we're just going to let this run. So what we're going to do now, after we set up the installation, I'm just going to explain to you how Nginx works, the default directory and the default configuration file. So again, we're just going to let this complete installing. It shouldn't take too much time at all. After it's completed installing, I'll enable the service so it runs on startup, and then we'll start the Nginx service. So to enable the service, we'll just say system control enable Nginx, like so, and that's going to start the it's going to enable it. We then want to start the service, right? So we're going to say start Nginx, and you can see it's going to tell you wait, we need to actually correct that. So it's Nginx, there we are, and we can then check the status, and the status tells us that it's active and running. So we can actually test this out and see whether Nginx is currently running on the IP. So if we paste this and hit go, you can see it tells us welcome to Nginx. If you see this page, the Nginx web server is successfully installed and working. Further configuration is required. So the important thing to understand about Nginx is that you need to work with the configuration quite a bit to specify exactly how you want your environment. So by default, the default directory as to where you'll be storing your web applications or your HTML files will be under var html. So that is the actual default directory, and you can actually see we have the index.nginx Debian HTML file, which is this file currently being displayed. So for example, I can remove the file, and again it would change, and I would then be able to access. I would then not be able to access any particular file on the server. That being said, as I said earlier on, Nginx is very similar to Apache in that, firstly, the configuration file lies within the etc folder, but that's the same of almost all Linux utilities. And of course, if I say vim etc nginx, and we then look for the nginx.conf file, and I open that up, you can see there's a ton of options that we need to configure here. Now, by default, Nginx will work with the default configuration that you can see right now, and you can use it that way, but that's not recommended. The first thing we want to do is we want to go all the way to the bottom and get rid of the mail section, because we don't need that at the moment. So I'll just get rid of that. I'll specify the visual mode, and I'll hit delete, because we don't need that, and also get rid of the virtual host configs here. And of course, if you're going to use your own virtual host configurations, you can do that. I'll be configuring mine here. So that's just going to specify include etc nginxconf.t, and yeah, so we'll just get rid of that, or you can just comment them if you don't want to use them right now. Now, the thing about Nginx is we need to specify our server, we need to specify the server option and the actual directory. Now, the way we do this is if we just scroll all the way to the top here, you can see Nginx sorts it out into HTTP. So that's the service. We know this is a web server, so it's using HTTP. We then specify the server and then the server options. And then after that, we specify the location similar to the directory on Apache. So the best way to explain this is to actually just take you through it. So these are all the options that you can configure regarding SSL, logging options, gzip, etc., etc. We'll take a look at the virtual host configs, and we're going to go all the way to the bottom of it here. And this is where we add our server option. So we say server, and we use 2 curly braces and open that up like so. So I'll just we'll just indent that, and you want to make sure that you indent your code so that it matches it. Right, so the first option we need to provide within the server configuration is the port we want Nginx to listen on. So by default, this is, we can say that is, with the option name is listen, and then we use the tab option, and we then specify the port. So for example, right now, Nginx is currently using port 80. I can also specify port 8080 if I want, but for now, let's leave it to port 80. And then the second option we can specify is the server name. So we say server name is going to be localhost, and we'll just leave the default settings as they are. So that is pretty much what is kept, or that is pretty much the de facto option there. We then provide the location, which is where we specify our root directory that we want to use, as opposed to the default one. And to do this, I'll just indent right over here, and we then say location, right? And then we use 2 curly braces as well, because this is where we specify the location. So I'll just indent that as well. And then within the location, we specify the root directory. So the root directory is going to be var var html, and I'll just say HTML. There we are, and we use the semicolon to terminate that command there. And we can also specify the location here, so var html, so that we know what directory this is referencing to. So that is the location. Now we can actually test this out. So I'll save and quit, and we'll restart Nginx. So system control restart Nginx and hit enter. It's going to tell us we have an error here, so I'll just check out if we have any potential errors. So within the server name, yeah, I think that's the issue here. We need to use an underscore here. So server name, and I'll quit, and we can then restart the service. And it's always important to restart the service after you've made changes so that you can test them out. So if I now restart, you can see it's going to work because we haven't changed anything. If we want to see if our new configuration is working and active, we can change, for example, the default port, and we can change that to something like, hey, 8080, right? And let's see if that actually registers. So if we write and quit and we restart the service, we can see that when we refresh it on port 80, it's not going to work. So we can actually just say port 8080 here, and now that works, and the web server is currently listening on port 8080. So we know that our configuration is working. I'll just change that back to port 80, right? And we can get started with the basic security configurations that we can work with. So I'll just write and quit, and I'll restart the service here. And let's get started with our first vulnerability. Now, as I mentioned with Apache, one of the main issues is giving out too much information, right? And web servers are notorious for this. Now, when we talk about Nginx, if I try and access a directory that I'm not supposed to access, for example, uploads, which doesn't exist, I'm just using an example, you can see that it gives us a very interesting banner or a response. It tells us 404 not found, which isn't interesting. But a user is able to tell what version of Nginx is running and the host operating system, which is a huge security leak, because now the attacker can use this information to target their attacks more efficiently. So we want to get rid of this. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to go into the configuration file, and we want to disable server tokens. Server tokens will just get rid of all information that is passed through the server token. So we just get rid of server tokens. We can also disable the server signature, and in this case the Nginx banner, by going right over here before. We can actually add it before the virtual host configs, and we can just add our option right over here. So I'll just go back a step, and we'll add the options here. So the first option we want to add is we want to make sure server tokens is off, which we've already done. We then can specify proxy. We say proxy hide header, right? And that's going to hide the header. And we then disable X powered by. So X powered by. And we can also disable clickjacking attacks by specifying the actual host as the origin. So proxy hide header powered by will disable the signature, and then we say add header. Add header, we then specify the X frame. So X frame, add header X frame, and the options are going to be the origin. So same origin. We say same origin right over here. There we are, and we use the semicolon. That's very important. And that's going to prevent the server or protect us from clickjacking attacks. Now, this is very, very basic stuff. When we set up, mod security, things are going to get much more interesting. Right. Okay. So these are just the basic options that we can add here. Now, if we save and we restart the server, so system control restart Nginx, and we try and reload this web page, you can now see that it only displays Nginx. It does not display the version number, nor does it display the operating system that's being used. Fantastic. We can now take a look at how to configure access, right? Now, access is very important. So, for example, we can allow or deny access to various IP addresses. So, for example, if I go to the location right over here, I can specify what IP addresses are allowed to access the server. So this is great for administrators who want to protect their server from anonymous access or from access from particular IPs. So for example, I can specify allow all, right? The option allow all will allow everyone. If I say deny all, so I can also say deny all, right? And what this will do is it will prevent anyone from accessing the web server. So if I restart and I go back into here, let me just go back and to make sure that that is configured correctly. So when you talk about, I just want to specify a few options here and make sure that everything makes sense. So when we talk about access permissions or specifying IPs that specifying who can access what in terms of the resources, it's very important that you ensure that you're not locking yourself out of the web server. So you can specify an IP that you want to deny. In this case, I can say I want to deny my own IP. I can also deny localhost, or I can only allow the localhost. So that's how you set that up. Now, that's of course something that you can do if you're interested in doing that. What I'm particularly interested in demonstrating is how to set up user and password authentication for directories, as I had done with Apache. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to save this and we can restart the Nginx service here. And let me just make sure that it's working. There we are. Fantastic. So if we want to protect the var html directory with a username and password combo, what would we need to do? Well, firstly, we would need to use the Apache 2 util, the htpassword command. So we say sudo htpassword, and then we specify the directory here. So we say etc nginx, and I'll just call it htpassword. So htpassword, sorry, that is under htpassword, like so. And then we specify the user. In this case, we'll just specify the user dev. Hit enter. It's going to ask us to enter the password right over here, and we'll enter the password right over there. It's going to add the password, and if we cat the contents of etc nginx and htpassword, you can see the user and the appropriate hash has been added. Now, to add the authentication to Nginx, it's really very simple. All that we need to do first of all is specify the auth options, the auth password, and then specify what directory we want to use the authentication in. So I'll open up the Nginx configuration file, and we'll go to the server options, which is where we specify the various options regarding the server. So within this, I'll specify I'll say auth basic. So the auth basic option, and then I specify the name of the authentication type. So in this case, I can just say development team only, just a simple basic banner regarding the type of authentication or why I need to authenticate. And then I specify the auth basic user file, and this will I'll just indent everything so it fits correctly or is displayed correctly here. So I'll just indent that one more time, and we go to the auth basic user file. This is the htpassword file, which again is under the directory etc nginx, and we then specify htpassword right over here, and we'll use the semicolon and also add the semicolon for the message there, and then that will essentially enable the authentication here. Now we need to enable it within the directories that we can that we currently have created, and we can add more than one location if we want. So I'll enable it within var html, and to do this we simply say auth basic, and we'll indent, and also indent this appropriately right over here, and we'll set that to on. So we want to enable it, and we can write and quit, and we can then restart Nginx. So I'll just restart the Nginx service, and we can restart that now. And as you can see, it's going to ask me to enter username and password. So if I hit an incorrect one, so I can just say test and 1 2 3, hit enter. It's going to tell me that authentication failed. And you can see once that is failed, it's going to tell us authentication required. So if I restart again, I can then specify dev and the password here. So hit enter, and it's working now.